Thanks for joining us on What's Your 20? Brought to you by J&J Band-Aid for cuts and minor injuries. The new first aid. Have you tried it? What's Your 20 is also brought to you in part by Frigidaire. Why should you pick ice out of the truck when you can own an electric fridge? Satisfaction that only Frigidaire can give.
Flapper dresses in style. Flappers were young women in the 1920s who dressed differently from the rest of the city people. Their dress, their hairstyle, and their attitude were much different from the Gibson girl. They are new generations of young people. Flappers dress somewhat like a boy. They tightly wound their chest and with strips of cloth in order to flatten it and chop off most of their hair. The waist of a flapper cloth were dropped to the hip line. The hem of the skirts also started to raise in the 1920s. At first, the hem only rose a few inches, but from 1925 to 1927, a flapper skirt fell just below the knee. Babe Ruth was known as the home run king, and he Sultan a swat because of his powerful and effective swing. In the 1927, Babe Ruth was playing for the New York Yankees throughout the 1927 season. Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig completed for his Babe Ruth makes home run record. Babe Ruth was known for the home run king, and he Sultan of swat because of his powerful and effective swing. In the 1927, Babe Ruth was playing for the New York Yankees. Throughout the 1927 season, Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig competed for who was going to end the season with the most home runs. The season lasted until September, when both men reached their 45th home run of the season.
The type of girl you wanna chew all of my bubble gum. The type of girl you wanna chew all of my bubble gum. I'm the type of girl you wanna take to your mama house.
The invention of bubble gum. Chewing gum has a history that spawns as far as back as the ancient Greeks, who chewed the resin from mastic trees. However, it was until the 1928 that Walter Dimmer happened upon just the right gum recipe to make the very first bubble gum, a special type of chewing gum that allows the chewer to make bubbles.
The type of girl you wanna chew.
Although the flapper is most closely associated with 1920s fashion, a number of our clothing styles were equally as popular during the decade. Skirt lengths fluctuated quite a bit. Women dressed in flashy evening attire, comfortable sportswear, and conservative work suits and dresses, either hung straight or flared at the hip. But despite the variety of women's 1920s fashions, all broke free of the physical and social constraints of the previous century. Men also deserted highly formal daily attire and even began to wear athletic clothing for the first time. The suits men wear today are still based for the most part on those worn in the late 1920s. During the 1920s, fine American suit makers like Brooks Brothers came into its own as the leader in American men's fashion. Brooks Brothers and other fine men's clothing houses define the look of the custom suit that has been in style for nearly 80 years. And now to Daisy with the 3 obituaries.
The type of girl you wanna chew.
Louis Armstrong, born August 4, 1901, and died July 6, 1971. He was a trumpeter, a bandleader, singer, soloist, film star, and comedian, considered one of the most influential artists in jazz history. He is known for songs like Stardust, La Vie en Rosa, and What a Wonderful World. Marcus Garvey, born August 17, 1887, and died June 10, 1940. He was an African-American leader during the 1920s who founded the Negro Improvement Association and advanced mass migration of African Americans back to Africa. Bessie Smith, born April 15, 1894, and died September 26, 1937. She was a female blues singer, was perhaps the outstanding vocalist of the decade. She achieved enormous popularity and in 1927 became the highest paid black artist in the world. Now to Simon with the Cinema Review.
The type of girl you wanna chew all of my bubble gum.
Thank you, Daisy. The film Peter Pan is an engaging fantasy directed by Herbert Brennan. It is a story of a young boy who lives in Neverland where he never grows up. One day, Peter flew into the real world and met Wendy, Michael, and John, played by Mary Bryan, Philip Delsey, and Jack Murphy. He takes them to Neverland and have fun adventures. There is also a character named Captain Hook, who is one of the main characters. Captain Hook is obsessed with good form. He doesn't get how Peter Pan keeps good form. While Peter Pan, who is the second main character, is considered a hero. He is very cocky, selfish, and afraid to grow up. After Peter Pan defeats Hook, he takes the kids back home.
The type of girl you wanna chew all of my bubble gum. The type of girl you wanna chew all of my bubble gum. I'm the type of girl you wanna take to your mama house. Take to your mama house.